these guys know some people from Kokotsmovi. I was telling them about you. You're from Kokotsmovi too. This is our lone Hopi student.
Oh, okay. Hi.
He's like Luke Skywalker, the only hope.
I'm trying to be Navajo.
Danny, don't put up with that. You tell.
Yeah. So that's my wife. My wife is from the Seneca tribe back in New York State, and so we both worked and served at the Indian Bible College, and so we've been married for 11 years now, and so she has a passion to really pour in her life and invest in Native women. She's come from a lot of trauma and abuse, and hey,
Mike?
Yeah, Mike.
No.
I think we're going to get more chairs.
Yeah, Mike.
Good to see you. Good to see Mike.
And so yeah, my wife, she works as the Dean of Women. She just loves to pour her time and energy into Native women who have, walked similar paths that she's been into. But so she loves serving there, and so we're both considered full-time staff member there at the college. Primarily, I'm the director of admissions at the Indian Bible College, but I also teach one class on biblical manhood, helping our young men look to Jesus as a model for manhood, and to see how he embraced his role and his responsibilities as a man. And that's kind of my responsibilities there at the college, and just a little bit about us too.
So this is my little albino tribe. This doesn't make me any less white. This is I joke that I'm a European mutt from the uptight white tribe. So the traditional regalia of my tie I'm not wearing today. But I grew up wanting to be a missionary. I have a pre-med degree, actually chemistry and biology. I think I go to medical school, but instead the Lord, medical school and then missions overseas. Instead the Lord led me to local church ministry. And when I met my wife, Sarah, she wanted to be a missionary, and now is a pastor, so she settled. She said, if I can't have a missionary, a pastor will have to do. So we actually helped plant a church here in town that merged with another church that became New City Church, north central Phoenix. And we're doing that for 2 years, and the Lord used that to lead us to the Indian Bible College and the Native ministry. And welcome. And there are a lot of people who have non-natives who serve Native people who have a burden going way back. It kind of, in so many ways, snuck up on my wife and I. I grew up in a town named for a Native tribe. The Yamhilis tribe is not part of the Grand Ronde Confederacy in Oregon. I grew up in a town called Yamhill, named after that tribe. But I never saw or understood the needs and opportunities amongst Native peoples until 14 years ago. And came to be the academic dean. The president resigned a month later, it was a wild ride at first because the school had some difficult years before I came, but love serving Native people and hope to do so the rest of my life. I want to hand over the presidency to a Native American someday, and would love to continue supporting that leader until I die. I have, you can see my kids there, my oldest, my 3 girls and then a boy. And I often tell people, kind of one of the family jokes is that I have 3 younger sisters. And I always wanted a younger brother, didn't get one. Then we started having kids. We had a girl, we had another girl, we had another girl. Right? And I have a chemistry major. I know how to do math. I decided that God didn't trust me with little boys. So when the ultrasound technician said, you're having a son for your 4th child, I actually told him, check again. God wouldn't do that to this kid. The really good news is what's trending does not define the mind of God. Just because something has been happening doesn't necessarily mean God wants it to continue to happen. And my son is that walking reminder to me, even though I had no younger brother and no son for so many years, that God can change the trending. And that's what Indian Bible College is all about, changing the trending of struggle and heartache and broken families and struggling in unhealthy churches in Native America. So, you want to...
Yeah.
You got one?
Yeah. So this map covers all the different tribes in the country. So believe it or not, there are 574 different tribes in the country. 22 of them reside in Arizona. Most people in America really only know or are familiar with like the Apaches and Cherokees or Navajo or Lakota. But it's pretty neat to kind of see where all the tribal lands are at. And so most of the tribes in the green represent the federally recognized tribes. You can kind of see the ones in the pink near North Carolina running down to Mississippi and that area too. Those are technically they're called unfederally recognized tribes. And then the blue area, those are called statistical lands, located in Oklahoma. So just generally speaking, there one Christian leader once said that there are less than 5% of Native Christians among Native peoples, and that's after 200 years of missions in this country. And but generally speaking, most tribes, are and still dealing with a lot of trauma and abuse. The last I heard, that teen suicide is 3 times higher than a national average. I come from the Navajo Nation, near the Four Corners area. That's where I grew up and where I was born and raised. My wife is out from New York State, near Niagara Falls. But it's interesting. Canada has over 600 tribes as well, so they have more of a presence there too. So, but I just like the map where it kind of shows the locations. But most people also don't really know there's 22 tribes that reside here in Arizona, and so just talking about missions in our backyard, what is God doing, or what are the people living in our backyard, and so it's kind of interesting as well.
574, does that include Alaska?
That does include Alaska, yeah.
And technically, that's just the federally recognized tribe. There's dozens more that are not recognized by the federal government, either because they choose not to be or because the government has resisted that.
I know some of the pink areas in North Carolina have become federally recognized as of the 2020 census. So I know some of that, like the Lummi tribe in North Carolina. So that's going to be green in the I think this might be the 2010 census map too. So.
Not being federally recognized or not being federally recognized, what kind of impact is that?
So probably the biggest thing is the federally recognized tribes. They receive some government assistance programs, like for medical, education, and so forth. Those are probably the 2 biggest things. The unfederally recognized tribes don't receive any of those programs.
On their own?
Yeah, so there's some pros and cons to those as well. So yeah.
Do tribes that are recognized do they also gain access to, NAGPRA as well, if you're recognized?
Yeah, there's some tribal benefits in that area too.
Archaeology students, so that's why I've had to study quite a bit.
Yeah. But I've always said too, like I said, there's pros and cons. They get some government assistance, but again, that creates more dependence from the tribe depending on the government and so forth as well. So, yeah.
Welcome. Come on in.
Again, generally speaking, so that the state with the most tribes is California, which has the most tribes out of any of the states. The states that have the most tribal population are California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas and Oklahoma. So it's interesting that God has placed us right in this pathway, right in Flagstaff as well.
One of the things we like to do when we talk about, when we introduce Native ministry, and what we're doing, we actually have kind of been asked to do the same workshop 3 times. So where the first half hour is going to be pretty much the same, but we're going to mix it up with the student testimonies, the second half an hour, and then Q&A time. So there'll be a bit of consistency across all 3 workshops, but also uniqueness. And Danny and Kelly are going to share their testimonies here in a minute. But I'm going to ask Michael and Kyle to just briefly introduce themselves. And then a veteran of Native Ministries over here, Mike, maybe you could introduce yourself briefly too. So Kyle, just tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name's Kyle Yazi. I'm from the Navajo Nation as well. I'm from a little community called Indian Wells. Went to school at Holbrook High School. Graduated in 2008. At that time, I wanted to come to Indian Bible College, but kind of held off on that. And about 2018 is when I did my first enrollment for the spring semester. Grew up in a Christian family too, so had a lot of influence growing up.
Yeah.
Hey, my name is Michael Palila. I am hoping you're from Third Mesa. I like long walks on the beach. Just kidding. No.
This is not a dating service.
Not really much to tell, but I became a Christian in 2018. Before that, I was into my tradition and really partaking a lot into it. And I just had like a little turning point. So 2018, that's when I gave my life to the Lord. And from there, not 2018, when I was 18, so 2016. And about a year later, I made the decision to come to IBC, and then I kind of had like a rocky start to that, but then came back, so now I'm like my 4th year there, so that's kind of good.
Good. Thanks, Michael. Mike, you want to introduce yourself? I particularly like the students to understand, because you've got some connection to IBC.
Yeah, I was sort of finished growing up there. I was not a student. I was asked to come in a different season. For about 3 or 4 years, my wife and me were there. Cora, Mike Hendricks, I live here in Gilbert now, working with Global Recordings Network. It's a ministry that we provide gospel recording messages for non-literate indigenous people in Mexico and many other countries. Other primary languages too, like Korean and Japanese and African dialects. So, but my time with IBC and on the res up there was, we were at Pinon for a while, and also at Houck, Arizona. Worked as a youth pastor there for a number of years, and got my heart thoroughly broken for young people when I was there. And those of you who are from there, you know what goes on. We figured that one of the best ways we could help young people to really solidify their faith was to begin walking it out, and through IBC and trips up to Northwest Territory, BC, and Canada, and Alberta, different provinces there. We saw a tremendous response when Native students were sharing their testimony. And even though their lives were not, maybe they weren't mature, nothing was perfect in life, but they were sharing. And it really helped them to grow. And so when they came home, I would have parents come to me. Literally one parent from Gallup came to me and said, "What did you do with my son? He is so different after going on this trip." So we began to realize that fulfilling the Great Commission of Jesus, which was still a big thing on the plate, that's what we needed to be doing full time, is still sharing the gospel. And IBC was the launch pad for that. I was working in music and promotion at that time, dean of students for a while. But I just really felt that was a tool that the Lord showed us through that experience in Flagstaff. That's how I got involved in what I'm doing right now. We're still following up with that. And now we have sharing life, we call them sharing life teams. And we do that in Mexico mostly, and Canada, and into Australia, New Zealand, Philippines quite regularly. But for the last couple of years, we've been sort of putting a pause on all that. Mexico is still wide open, so I'm still always looking for people to work. I'm coordinating teams for that right now, basically northern Mexico and as far as Oaxaca, actually southern Mexico. Making new recordings all the time.
Cool. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Too. I was hoping we'd hook up.
Yeah, glad you're here.
Yeah.
So we want to talk a little bit about the plight of Native people and the potential of Native people, and those are words that an author, Craig Smith, talks about those two combinations. The U.S. Census, it changes kind of every decade, but it's one of the fastest growing demographics Native population is in the United States, which is the reverse of what took place when Columbus landed in 1492. There were somewhere between 5 and 20 million. The U.S. Census found 237,000 in 1900. So you had a population decimation over those 4 centuries that then has completely changed and reversed. So it's a population whose needs and opportunities are constantly increasing. Daniel's wife, Corrine, has been on dozens of reservations, and she coined the phrase, or borrowed the phrase at least, brought it to IBC, that the reservation is oftentimes Satan's playground. There's a lot of spiritual darkness. It seems to me, personally at least, that Native people are Satan's favorite people in this land. And I think some of the reason why we're gonna be unpacking here in a little bit. So, do you want to talk about these pieces here?
Yeah, most Native people, I know when they come to the college or that we meet, that we come across, have experienced many of the forms of abuse: physical, sexual, verbal neglect, and it's not uncommon for a kid, 12 years old, 13 years old, to 15 to have experienced numerous areas in this area. I think one of the biggest things that I think, talking about Satan's playground, I think I once heard someone say, if Satan can get a hold of them and allow them to destroy themselves too, then he's only won more of their hearts. And but I talked about suicide as one of the biggest things, one of the number one killers among Native peoples. We've kind of always shared too about Christianity is there are less than 5% that are followers of Jesus after hundreds of years of missionary activity. And the number one obstacle that Native people say is that Christianity is the white man's religion. And there's so many. Every reservation you go to, every tribe that you visit, they always say that that's the white man's religion. And if you become a Christian, oftentimes you're almost losing your identity in that way too.
This is not just my comb over, although it does help cover my bald spot a little bit. And if you forget my name, you can just call me President Harry, because there aren't too many college presidents who are having this much fun in their heads. This is for my wife, and this is for our students. This is my walking lament for all the hundreds of years of bad haircuts to Native men. Because, and that's a joke that Richard Twix makes in one of his books. Because the history of missions amongst Native people, praise God, the gospel was brought, but in addition to the colonization and the tragedy of manifest destiny, so often, if a Native man would come to Christ or go to the boarding school or be a part of the church, the first thing they would do would be to cut his hair. And that ethnocentrism, bringing not just the gospel, but bringing a white version of church and of Jesus is one of the great tragedies in the history of missions and ministry amongst Native peoples. If you're looking for a tribal people who have thriving churches, who are Native American led, and are able to send Native missionaries to other tribes around the world, I don't think you're going to look really hard. In 570 registered tribes, I don't think there's a single one that has churches that are healthy enough to send their best and brightest other tribes, let alone around the world. And our passion is to see that change, because as great as the plight is, so even greater is the potential. The most effective way to reach a group of people is to train them to reach and to lead their own people, and that's what Indian Bible College has been doing for 65 years. But even more compelling for me personally is the recognition that Native people have a platform for the gospel around the world. that maybe no other people group on the planet has. There's a worldwide fascination with Native culture and a compassion and empathy with the people. Partially thanks to Hollywood, certain missionaries have traveled around the world and they find out they're from the United States. You know any Indians? You know any Native Americans? There's a global fascination with Native people. To come to Christ as a Native American is very similar to what a Muslim goes through in the family ostracization and loss of identity that Daniel just mentioned. And the unreached peoples of the world, those without the gospel, the scriptures in their own language, they're almost always tribal peoples. Who better to finish the job of reaching the unreached of global missions than the original inhabitants of this land? And so one of the things that fuels me, and as I shared earlier with my story, wanting to be a missionary and go into local church ministry instead, I'm so thankful that God didn't take me overseas, but brought me to a ministry that was raise up Native leaders to be able to reach and to lead their own people, which I think is one of the smartest ways to one of the greatest needs in the country and one of the greatest opportunities for the gospel around the world. If we can see healthy, thriving Native leaders leading robust, thriving churches, that they could someday send healthy missionaries around the world, I think they could be some of the most effective missionaries the world has ever seen. To put it even a little more bluntly or crassly, I think one fully trained, mature Native American in the mission field is worth 5 white people like me. So I think it's a very strategic thing to be about training Native leaders for ministry to their own people, but ultimately that we might see Native peoples going all around the world. And that's a huge part of our vision. So our mission statement at IBC is to see Native Christians be trained for lifetimes of biblical ministry, spiritual leadership to their people and to the world. You guys probably know Acts chapter 1, verse 8, right? That you'll receive power and the Holy Spirit comes on you. You'll be my witness in Jerusalem, Judea, and to the ends of the earth. Is that what it says? Look closely. Is there anything missing? Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria. See what I did there? You assumed because it was in print it was accurate. That was a dirty trick to play. Sorry. But we have
You're not going to believe anything else.
The students all know that I do this kind of thing all the time. Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. I would suggest that we have left over. In going to the ends of the earth, we've done ministry locally, regionally, and globally, but often neglected the cross-cultural opportunities right within our own land. Think about Samaria in Jesus' day. They were the people just in the north with whom there was a lot of prejudice and hostility and mistreatment. There's a bad history with the Samaritan people. So much so that Jesus, right, when he goes through Samaria and the woman at the well, the apostles and disciples are freaking out. Jesus, when answering the question, who is my neighbor? Well, there was a guy who, got beat down. It was a Samaritan. Jesus is constantly talking about the one other than you. The history of missions in this land is that we have failed the first people of this land to see robust, thriving Native churches in Native America, so one of the things that I delight to do is to challenge God's people that I think every non-Native church in this country needs to be doing something for Native people to see them thriving, and not just salvation but discipleship. So. You want to talk about a little more about the vision?
Yeah, I love our vision because, we're not just looking to local reservations and tribes, although that's the biggest need. That's where most of our students want to go after their training. But as it says here, Indian Bible College labors to see Native America cease to be the mission field and the Native Church mobilized to send missionaries all over the world. And our motto is always from a mission field to a mission force, and I think that's what gets me up every day. That's what drives me whenever I'm talking to prospective students, is to see Native America one day cease to be a mission field, and that the Native Church can be a missions force. Billy Graham once said of Native peoples that that Native America can be a sleeping giant for the gospel. And I love that picture. I just love that what he shared about about the power that God working through Native people can do. But I always take that a step further and say, you know what, I don't want to be known as a person of potential. I don't want to be known as a sleeping giant. Like, I want to be known as the giant who awakes, who gets up and is used for God's purposes. But I just love that, to come from a mission field to a mission force. And I think just seeing that happen with some of our alumni, one of our lone alumni was working in the Ukraine with his wife, serving there until everything happened in that country too. But that's kind of our prayer. My wife and I have jump-started a ministry alongside Indian Bible College called Natives to France, and we've been taking natives, some of our students, to France as well, and doing cultural presentations. And it's amazing, once you get out of this country, we're like rock stars. And the France, they're just fascinated. I mean, so a student will do a moccasin demonstration. I'll share a jewelry demonstration, and each one of us will share. But all of it is to share our stories, to share the hope of Jesus with the French people. And the French are just they're open. And I think in France, one person said there's less than 1% that are Christians in that country. So it's even less than Native American. But this vision just excites me from going from a plight to the potential that Native people can be.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Daniel. All right. You guys rock, paper, scissors, see who's going to go first. You strategically played that well. Good call.
Hi, my name is Kelly. I am Navajo. I'm from Gallup, New Mexico, which is about, like 4.5 hours from here, maybe. I share a little bit about myself. I grew up near Gallup, a little community outside. It's called Senejona. I didn't really grow up in we went to church on Sundays, but we had the cops at our house on Saturdays. So we were kind of like, there's a lot of domestic violence in my home growing up. And just a very broken, dysfunctional home life. I didn't really know how to handle feelings or how to really do anything. But time went on. Home life was still very dysfunctional and broken. So like I said, we would go to church, but I began to think like, well, if this is what church is, or this Christianity, I don't want it because it's very hurtful. So life went on. A little bit after I got into like my teenage years, I became very depressed. Very depressed. Just because everything that was happening at home. And so, I was just in a very dark place mentally, and I didn't know how to handle it. So I began to spiral very, very quickly. And I went through this dark place probably for years. That's all I knew. Probably about when I was 18. I went to a conference in Missouri. It's a Warrior Leadership Summit. It's a conference for Native Americans. really big one, and that's where I heard the gospel in a new light. I'd heard it before, but hearing it after going through hell, basically, it brought a lot of hope to me. Yeah, sorry. It was a very big light and really big darkness. And after coming to the Lord, I had come to IBC because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So coming here, I'm a senior here. This is my senior year, hopefully. And
You're gonna graduate. It's good.
I can't explain just how thankful I am for IBC. Just for the healing that the healing that has been brought to me, been offered to me, and the people around me, like the Native leaders that I've seen around me, want the best for me, and to see me in a healthy place, and to firstly I have to be healthy to help other people. I'd cause more harm if not. And I think, I truly do love IBC's vision and what they stand for, what they pursue out of their students, and not being the mission field, but wanting to be the mission force and go out one day and help other, whether it be Native women as myself or others who have a similar story to me. So that's me.
Cool. Dave?
I'll introduce myself in my native language for you guys. So, Osio Nigara, Danny Dawadoa, Daligua, Oklahoma, Janela, Jalagi Ayeli, Janela. Hello, my name is Danny. I come from Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and I am Cherokee. And so, just a little bit about myself. I'm the youngest of 5. For me, growing up was kind of a lot of neglect. My mom, she was really into crime and stuff like that. She was always in and out of jail. And my dad, he was a heavy alcoholic. And it's a pretty big trend among Native people to be wrapped in alcoholism. And so there'd be times where he'd be on bingers for weeks at a time. And my mom, she'd be gone for weeks at a time in jail. And so at about 4 years old, I kind of had to learn to start taking care of myself in terms of preparing my own meals, just trying to find some sort of security. And so whenever I was 6 years old, that led to my siblings and I getting taken into foster care. And that's where I really started to develop these feelings of being unwanted, these feelings of not belonging in a sense, and feeling like, I just wanted to find a place to call home. And so after a couple of years of that, bouncing from home to home all over the state of Oklahoma, my mom finally earned custody back of us. And she had a boyfriend at the time, and my dad had left her. But he was very abusive, especially towards me. I'm the youngest, like I said, but I'm also pretty small, if you can't tell. And because of that, I became an easy target. And so he would come after me to try to make an example out of my sibling, or out of me to my siblings. And so I would constantly just be paranoid, be on the lookout, and feeling like I did something wrong. And so I would ask my mom, what did I do? How can I do better? Why am I not good enough? And she would say, well, you're not good enough. If only you were better, he wouldn't hit you. If only you were better, he would treat you better. And so I carried that as a little 6 to 8 year old kid. And for me, I just began to really start getting involved in hanging out with the wrong crowd. I started hanging out with teenagers when I was 8 and got into smoking and drinking. And I had my first beer with my dad when I was 9 years old. And he finally started coming back around, and it felt like, you know, maybe we'll have a happy family. Maybe we'll get to do this father-son thing right. But I was getting ready for school one day and woke up, and he was face down on the ground and called paramedics and everything. But by the time they got there, it was too late. And so, you know, the police, they had to pull me away from him because I just felt this need that, you know, I finally had something going right, and it was taken away just like that. And so for me, it was just more blaming myself, thinking I did something, that it was all my fault and things like that. And so at 11 years old, I attempted to take my life for the first time. And I failed, and I was like, man, I'm not even good enough to die. And I'd carry this onto myself and hang out with these older kids, go to parties, be out until midnight, you know, just being, you know, 11, 12 years old. And, you know, I'd still go to church at that time. Being in Oklahoma is like the Bible Belt. And so I knew about Christmas, I knew what it meant, I knew about Easter, you know, I heard the name Jesus, but to me it was just another story. And so I went to this event at the church. It was like a revival event. And there they really started to talk about something that I never heard about. And what that was a place of belonging, a place of hope, someone that really loves you. And to me, you know, I always thought those were just words, but it was just something different in that message, something different that time. And so the pastor guy began to speak more and more about who Jesus is, and that he is our Father, and he really does love us. And so that was the first time, you know, I really felt the Holy Spirit moving in my life, and I began a relationship with Jesus that day. But, you know, things didn't get easy after that. High school started, and I went back to doing the same old thing, getting mixed up in the wrong crowd, doing drugs and alcohol, and found myself back in that suicidal place, in that place of no hope. And I was like, blaming myself again, you know, like, did I fall out of grace? Did I do something wrong? And, you know, that's whenever I discovered that, you know, Jesus never left me. You know, I left Jesus. And so it just blew me away that I was able to go back to him, that he was still waiting for me with open arms, and he still loved me. And so ever since then, you know, I've been pretty on fire. I've been in love with Jesus. And, you know, I got to travel all over the country to different Native reservations, sharing my story with kids that are just like me, you know, kids that are going through the foster system, going through depression. And it was actually on Daniel's wife's reservation in New York where I talked to my first Native kid one-on-one, and talked to him, and it was like talking to myself. And his name was Josiah, and I remember just our entire conversation, and that's where I really felt the Lord leading me to Native ministry. And so since then, I've just really been excited about wanting to be at Indian Bible College and just really doing what I can to help our people, because what they need is hope. And so, yeah, that's the story.
I'm proud of both of you guys. A couple more things, including a picture, and then we'll take some questions, and I'd be interested in hearing what interest you have in Native ministry and what brings you here. This is one of my favorite pictures of the last 14 years. On this day, we had 4 older white missionaries who were standing next to the younger Native American who was taking their job, or who was replacing them. And from right to left of the librarian, business administrator, and then director of work at the Bible College. And I mentioned earlier, right, my goal is to hand over my job to Native American. I hope to be the last white president of the college. And if that's in a few more years, a few more decades, I'm still young-ish enough that hopefully I can wait that out. But I think one of my favorite parts of this picture is on the far left-hand side there. The white guy with the white tie is Roger Scarborough, who's one of the most effective white missionaries amongst Native peoples in the last 30 years. He's served Navajo and Hopi Pueblo, Zuni Pueblo. Sorry. Didn't mean to offend you there, Mike. He has served the Hopi a little bit, but Zuni Pueblo. And this young man on the far left-hand side who was getting a bachelor's degree that day, Roger led him to Christ, discipled him, sent him to Bible college, helped fund him at IBC, and a few months after this picture was taken, Barlow went back and took his youth pastor's job for his own church there in Zuni Pueblo, which is the only church serving the Zuni Pueblo people. That's exactly why we exist, is to raise up more and more Native leaders. There's kind of a joke on the Navajo reservation that summer is white van season. You know why it's white van season? Because when the white and Asian churches come into town, they come in white vans, and they're coming in and doing for Native Americans what they can and should be doing for themselves. And ultimately, this is part of our passion at IBC, is to see that day cease and to see the new day come when Native people are standing shoulder to shoulder with the American church reaching around the world. With that in mind, we're not here just to highlight IBC. These are a few of, not even all of, these are some of the Native ministries that are based in the state of Arizona. And so one of the things we want to do, and even one of the reasons we have an exhibit table out there in the courtyard, is we want to highlight not just IBC, but Native ministry in general. We're in relationship with all of these organizations and the leaders of these, so and they do different kinds of things with different tribes or a lot of different avenues. I had started working on another slide of Native ministries outside the country, or outside the state, across the country, and that was going to take too long. But there's a lot of ways to partner, a lot of ways to pray, a lot of ways to serve, to give. But like I said earlier, I'm really convinced that every non-Native church needs to feel some responsibility. I believe that my privileges as a white American have come on the backs of Native people suffering. And I'm not talking about white guilt, I'm talking about Christian responsibility. In so many ways, the riches and the wealth and opportunities of this land oftentimes came at the expense of Native people's suffering. And the reservation system, which creates that dependency and brokenness, the boarding school movement that followed, I think as the church we have a responsibility seeing Native people thriving, and Native believers especially thriving and reaching, discipling their own people. So these are, as I mentioned, just some of the ministries that are based here in the state of Arizona, ways to get involved in Native ministry outside your own backyard. So at IBC, I think this is our last slide. We'll take any questions or input or comments you might have. We believe that we're called to be centered on the Word of God. We believe that we're called to be relational, and you may have picked that up. Most of the workshops, you have one individual talking. We try to seek to be very collaborative here, and the four voices, and want to give you a voice here now in a minute. That participatory, collaborative teamwork approach, which is very biblical and very cultural as well. But ultimately, the goal is to see lives transformed. We tell every applicant we're not just about filled heads, but changed lives. If you just want a Bible college degree, that's not who we are. If you want to become more like Jesus, more who He's created and called you to be, and even maybe help your people do the same, then come on, because that's what we're about. And so we're very holistic. We're committed not just to an accredited certificate, associate, and bachelor's, but leadership training, abuse recovery, entrepreneur and vocational training. Trying to help our students in so many ways with soul care and modeling. It's really a healthy community that we're committed to building, because many of our students have come from unhealthy families and unhealthy churches, and they don't know how to. Community is a cultural value, but they've never seen it in a healthy way, and so experiencing it, tasting it, touching it gives them the chance then to know how to go reproduce it. And so BRT, these are institutional goals, always in that order. 1 + 2 = 3. We love what God's doing to change lives and raise up healthy Native leaders for the sake of reaching their own people. And are delighted to partner with some of the other Native ministries. So I'm going to leave that slide up and see what questions or comments you might have. What are your names? Josiah? Oh, that was. Yeah, I heard Josiah, right? What brings you here, Josiah?
Oh, I'm tagging along with my dad. He's manages the OMF table, helping out here and there. But I'm from Las Cruces, New Mexico, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Within New Mexico, so I'm an archaeology student studying Southwest archaeology. So I know the anthropology department and the professors there are working with Native people either for repatriation or also just archaeology in general. I know the museum I would go at. I'm blanking on the name of our museum, but they also work regularly with indigenous artists to show off their art and things, as well as kind of standard archaeological or historical exhibits.
Cool. Good to meet you, Josiah.
Thank you.
What's your name?
I'm Connie.
Connie?
Yeah, I'm interested in Native American lives. I've recently been connected with a church in Rio. I knew I was going to do this. Gila Bend. Gila Bend. And I've had a chance to be down there a few times, meeting some kids, helping out with the kids program. And there's a little bit of Native American blood in our family, so I know a little bit of our story, but really unaware of anything broader than that. So I'm just excited to be here and hear more. So, yeah.
Thanks. Any comments or questions, responses, disagreements? I'm looking at you, Michael. I know you've always got something contrary ready to go.
I hope it's not a loaded question. I don't mean it to be. How do you, I can hear, well, this is we're witnessing to another, Native person. If you're, how can I say that? How do you walk the line where you are following the Lord? Are you able to still embrace your identity? I mean, in the culture and traditions. It must be hard walking that line of retaining. I guess what you have to do, pick and choose. You have to decide, yes, I can still identify with this part of my cultural and tradition in my tribe, or how does that work? Or is that too much of a loaded question?
I was actually going to ask something similar in the sense of, because I know, and I think that's a great goal, the goal of training Native missionaries to in turn serve the other natives. And it's just like, yeah, it's like, because I know part of that is, and it's been really good in some certain ways, some of those movements over the past past decades of different indigenous communities, trying to, rebuild, reintegrate their culture or like preserve it, and outreach and stuff. But then, like you said, kind of that balance of, because I don't know, like you said, the issue of, in many ways, a lot of the communities today, and you understandably have that idea of, if you become a Christian, you've given up your native community, your native identity, you've given into colonization, you've given into that effort to eradicate. So, like, I don't know, I'm just curious, just find it interesting how it kind of, like you said, that's a really, really hard thing to navigate, because you want to serve Christ. Christ isn't, it's not white Jesus, it's not, American Jesus or whatever. God, Christ is international, Christ is everywhere, and dealing with that. Because a lot of those communities are also going into, like, diving back in, headstrong back into their old religions and everything.
You're asking truly one of the most challenging questions.
Sorry.
No. We're not a skeletons in the closet kind of a place. There's no taboo subjects, both internally and even externally. So you guys.
I think that topic of contextualization, it's a very divisive topic among Native ministries. To even mention it or talk about it it's very divisive. You have one camp who says let's bring in the drums, let's bring in the feathers and the dances and all that stuff. And then another camp says let's do away with everything. The drums are the devil's instrument, or we can't bring anything in. So this camp will look more like a regular American church. And so you have these two camps who really will not work together. So the mention of what you just mentioned, oftentimes will bring a lot of tension within ministries and churches. But all that said, we want to be kind of a platform where people can come and talk about it. But it's interesting that I've traveled to France and I've heard other. Probably Mike can speak into that too. It seems like among Native America here in the U.S., it seems to be a bigger debate than if you were to go into Africa or to other countries. Like other countries, you will see them praising God more in their language, in their customs and stuff. But here, and I personally think it's because when the missionaries first came to the native people, they said you have to stop singing in your language. You have to look like, you have to cut your hair. You have to look like us. And so those traditions continued, and I believe that's one of the reasons why. Today, a lot of Native peoples will say, that there's that division there. But I think what we're trying to do is really openly continue to talk about this area, because we see it in the Bible. We see healthy contextualization. Jesus did it, coming from heaven to earth. He was able to live in the world, but yet without sin. So I think it is possible, but I think we're still in the early stages. I feel like in Native America, where the churches are not ready yet, they're still scared to talk about what does healthy contextualization look like. I personally didn't grow up playing a drum. I personally didn't grow up going to ceremonies and so forth. I grew up playing a guitar. So for me, a guitar really speaks. When I play it, it brings me closer to God. I can sing, I can worship God in that way. I can play a drum too. I can, bang it and sing, but it just doesn't do the same thing for me as a guitar. So, but I think, it's a very deep topic. But I think we're not afraid to dive into it and to show our students that that healthy contextualization is possible.
And it must be very challenging. I'm thinking of people as individuals, and because there's a valid point. I don't want to give up my identity. I don't want to I no longer belong, and that's why I was just curious. I know as Christians we all face that to some degree, but probably not as much, as Native Americans.
Well, I think I would be careful too, because you see in the Bible where when the gospel, when the church was starting to begin, a lot of the early Christians would say you have to be circumcised, but the Gentiles have to be circumcised, and there was a lot of division. Even Peter was challenged that in Acts. He said, but they came to him and said, no, you don't have to be circumcised. All you need is faith in Jesus alone. So I think I would be careful too of forcing Native people. Just because you're Native doesn't mean we need to bring in a drum for you. You know what I mean? Or I need to wear a feather for this person. And I think each situation is very unique. So.
Three of these students that are in a class, right? The entire class, their whole semester is Christ and Culture class. Is exactly, and it's one of several of our upper division classes that helps our students on a solid theology and hermeneutics on how to interpret Scripture for themselves. And so Kelly, kind of Michael, any recent or distant observations related to this? You guys want to contribute?
For me, we actually just kind of talked about this. Well, kind of loosely. I've always struggled with that concept. The past 2 years mostly. I didn't really grow up like Daniel. I didn't grow up with a lot of ceremonies or really a lot of the traditional side of things. And so my grandma. She grew up very traditional, and then she gave her life to the Lord when she was pretty young. I don't remember when. She was pretty young, so she went on to that side of everything about my culture is wrong. So my mom and her brothers and sisters, they don't really know a lot about their culture because my grandma didn't raise them like that because she thought it was wrong. As time went on, I think they kind of started to explore more of, okay, maybe this is good. Maybe not with the medicine man and that. Maybe not with these prayers to these other gods like this. And then just kind of feeling it out. I think the hardest part is knowing that my identity isn't in being Navajo, isn't in my ethnic identity. That's really hard. But it's also a comfort, because you see what's happened when people taking our native identity away.
Yeah.
And so you hold it. It gives me a lot more comfort into, okay, this being native isn't my full identity, but being a child of God is, and really holding on to that. It's a very, for me, it's been a very hard process. Very wrestling with God in this process of understanding. Yeah, that's a really good question, though. Thank you.
I can imagine that.
We're on a mission board at our church, and we're trying to connect with the Hopi Reservation, and the church at Koppen, and we're trying to. A lot of the problems that you have on the reservation, we have down here. Same stuff. The abuse, we have it down here, and we need to hear from you guys. And the culture is an open door for people down here. They will listen. They will connect. They will see the culture, and that will give you a voice. They'll say, "What do you have to say to us?" And then your testimonies and your that culture is an open door. That they will embrace. They will. They're people down here. They feel guilty. People in our church, they have the guilt. They have all of the junk, too, and they need to hear it. We're not looking to minister up there. We're looking for networking, collaboration. What can you give us? What you guys paid a price. And what can you tell us and our kids? And our kids are hurting. I'm Hispanic, and I could relate to you guys the way I was brought up, and so we need to hear from you. We really need to hear from you, and I think more than any other culture, and embrace your culture, and I think that's the sleeping giant. That's where people will they'll listen, I think, to what you have to say. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Joe.
That's what God has been telling me.
Mucho gusto.
Thank you.
Well, we're past time, and our host is out there is stalking us to come get the recording, like what she's supposed to do. So maybe we could just kind of close in prayer. I mean, we're kind of starting the missions conference here. We do have an exhibit table out there that'll be staffed by students the entire time. So we're at the very end out in the corner. So Mike, would you close us in prayer? You've got a lot of history with Native people and even IBC. And just pray for all those.
Dear God, thank you just for this day, just for this time, for Daniel and Jason, just for this opportunity here to speak to people and really just being able to show their heart for Native people, for the people here, and just for the questions that they have. It's all really good. I just pray just for the conference here, just for the people who do come, Lord, that they're able to just have an open heart and really just maybe have a little candle lit in their heart for Native American people, and really that they're able to see what's going on, that there are people out there who do need Jesus. And I just pray for those out there who are hurting and who feel like they have nowhere to go. That they're able, for my fellow students here who are able to share their testimony, that it's able to really just echo into their hearts, Lord. I just thank you just for this time, for the people here, and for these guys here who have this heart for Native ministry, and that the people that they're going to influence, the people that they're going to help, and that hopefully one day that they too will be able to, to meet and to train other people, and really just start a spark in Native in the Native community. I just thank you just for these people here, and for Jason and Daniel sharing what's on their heart and their time there at IBC. That's all I know. Amen.
Thank you.